Buckle up, everyone, and welcome to Carpool Rugby League, a show where two rugby league tragics talk everything rugby league on your way to and from work. I'm Shane.
And I am the chameleon.
Welcome aboard and on with the show. I suppose I just had something through on my phone as I was actually hooking up this podcast, and it's a bit of a sad occasion. David Morrow has it's been announced that he passed away in the last hour. It was announced in the last hour. I'm not too sure when he passed away. Look, I know Griffo.
Just as you were saying that, Shane,
Yeah.
I just got the NRL
Yeah,
website up, and
yeah,
there it is.
yeah. I got a message through on my phone. I suppose it's a bit lost for words, really. I remember him, if at our vintage Griffo. To paint a picture for some of the younger listeners out there, you had two live games a week on television. That was the Friday game and then the Saturday game. And he commentated the Saturday game. And more often than not, depending on what was happening on Fridays and whatnot, that was the game you sat down and you watched Saturday afternoon on the ABC. And his voice, along with Warren Boland, just absolutely synonymous with rugby league, who then went from when they no longer showed it on ABC. He then took over the ABC radio commentary. I was a big fan of his. I religiously listened to ABC when he was there, and later on, of course, he went then to 2GB. I think around 2015 or something. On the ABC, I think one of the things as a commentator, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. I thought he was a great TV and radio commentator. But on the ABC, on the radio, he also, for what we take for granted these days, where you can turn on the radio on a Saturday and at 12 o'clock, you've got 5 hours of rugby league and everyone's talking rugby league and there's interviews and things. He brought that to a national audience, or definitely to an ABC audience, which was a national one at the time, depending on, and if you're in New South Wales with rugby league and vice versa, but also was instrumental in getting other people to understand rugby league as digital radio, came into effect. And it's a sad day. Thank God he lived long enough to hear that he will be a NRL Hall of Fame inductee. Unfortunately, dying of brain cancer. Highlights, I think, if you haven't got your Mark Hughes beanie, go get one. But definitely a sad occasion. Hopefully he's in a better place now. Look, I found him, he had a considerable amount of wit. But what I found growing up listening to him commentate is he taught me about rugby league. And whilst we understand commentators do their job, very few have the insights that he had, and was able to complement. Warren Ryan came up with part of his show as well. And when you're talking about a guy who was an immensely talented coach and knew rugby league backwards, he could hold it with the best of them, which is why, whether he be commentating or whether he be interviewing, it was seamless, because his knowledge of rugby league and like I said, his sense of humour and his wit. I think rugby league is a better product because of people like him, and I'm glad he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Still, people would consider relatively young, 71, but definitely rugby league is a lesser place today because he's no longer a part of it. But his legacy in what rugby league is as a product that goes to both Australia-wide, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, the global community, I think a lot of people saw further because they stood on his shoulders. And condolences to his family and friends. And if you're from my vintage, his voice would be definitely one that would instantly ring in your head when you talk rugby league. What do you think, Griff?
There's not too much more that I can add to that, Shane. I'm quite surprised. Like you, I obviously spent a lot of time listening to David Morrow, originally on TV, on the ABC, and then later on radio, as you mentioned, with Warren Ryan. They formed a very good radio team. And then they departed ways with the ABC some years ago. I believe he went to 2GB. I never really listened to 2GB, but no, he was a very good commentator and someone that was easy to listen to. Wasn't a lot of like some of them could just be bags of wind. He wasn't. My best memory of David Morrow was, you can probably look this up on YouTube, Paddy Morton's faux pas.
Fatty Morton.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the poor bugger.
Fatty didn't know he was live on air. He's dropped the F-bomb back in days when you couldn't do that. Well, not that you can really now, but it was much less common and much more frowned upon. This is back probably in the 1980s, possibly very early 90s. But and David Morrow's response was, I think we've got a problem with our sound system.
Technical difficulties.
It just deflected quite nicely down the fine leg. It's very sad. I didn't even know he was unwell. I knew he had been inducted, or was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and deservedly so.
Yeah, the first I heard was his Hall of Fame was fast tracked in the knowledge that he may not. Actually, talking about commentators' gaffes, you used to be able to YouTube it. I don't know if you can anymore. It was a game. It was a game in the late 90s, and it was a Graham Hughes commentated game where it's just a shambles. Like, there's no sound, there's nothing, and he's going off he's going absolutely off his tree, and he's going off his nana, and then the minute he cues in, it was like a different person talking, and welcome to the SFS here for Game of the Day. It was quite comical. Griffo, I'll quickly go through last week's games, and then of course the big thing tonight is Origin. Last week we saw the Dolphins beat the Rabbitohs 36-28. That's probably now nail in the coffin for the Bunnies. It's going to be very hard to come back from there. Sharks 58, Tigers 6. Probably less said about the Tigers there, the better. Titans 24, Eels 16. Again, a game where the Eels just could not get a start. Dragons, we talked about this last week. Dragons 30, Broncos 26. I'm going to say they're in strife. And looking at their coach in the dressing room, I think he's feeling it a bit too. And the Seagulls, 44, beat the Knights 6. The ladder with buys and everything looks a bit like this. On 32 points out in front, we have the Melbourne Storm. They've got 13 wins. In second spot on 28 is the Panthers on 11 wins. Third spot on 26 and fourth place with 26, both with 11 wins, as well are the Roosters and the Sharks. The Doggies are on 24 and 5th. Dolphins 24 and 6th. Seagulls 7th on 23, and the Cowboys 8th on 22. So that odd point there for the Seagulls are helping them get into the 8. The Dragons just outside of 9th. The Knights are in 10th, first to the 20s. Raiders on 20 on 11th. We have the Warriors, 19 points. They're in 12th spot. The Broncos, 18 points. They're 7 and 2. 7 and 10 with 2 buys. So they're in trouble, I think. The Titans, they're on 18 points as well. They're on 6 wins to bye. Rabbitohs are on 18, 6 wins. Eels 4 wins in 16th spot, and on 17th spot also with 4 wins you have the Tigers. So that is the draw as we see it. However, we do have a very, very big game coming up tonight. State of Origin. I've got to say I'm absolutely pumped for this game. Let's go through and see what these teams look like, see what we have, and we'll see. Talk about what New South Wales can do to bring this one home. Reece Walsh and Dylan Edwards are respective fullbacks. Cobbo and To'o are the wingers. Dane Gagai, Bradman Best. Bradman Best had a bit of a cloud over him, but still part of the starting lineup. The Hammer and Stephen Crichton in the centres. Val Holmes on the wing with Zach Lomax on the wing as well. Tom Dearden is 5'8" for the Maroons. Jerome Luai is for the Blues. And their captain, Daly Cherry Evans, for the Maroons, while Mr. Mitchell Moses, who had a cracking game too, is there for the Blues. In the forwards, Queensland, they see their front three looking like Ruben Cotter, Ben Hunt, and Lindsay Collins. For the Blues, it's Jake Trbojevic, Robson, and Payne Haas. Kurt Capewell for the Maroons and Nanai for both the second rowers. For the New South Wales team, it's Liam Martin, Angus Crichton. Patrick Carrigan locks for the Maroons, and Cameron Murray, he's doing it for the Blues. On the interchange bench, we have Harry Grant 14, Fodawaker 15, Kafusi 16, and Kalen Ponga is named at 17 with Connor Watson for the New South Wales Blues, Isaiah Yeo, Mitch Barnett, and Spencer Leniu. He's also named for the Blues. Interestingly, they've got Burton and Swatali off just in case. At the moment, it looks like conditions are good. The weather will be fine. It will be cold. It will be absolutely freezing, they reckon, up there, which I suppose, I don't know if that's freezing by New South Wales standard. Look, Griff, I'm going to pass to you first. I'm going to say it. I think that whilst Latrell Mitchell is a massive out for the Blues, I have absolute faith that we're going to be talking about this next week as a great Blues victory. It'll probably be tight, but I think that they've got the team to bring it home. What are you thinking in this one, Griff? I know who you're going for. I know who you're going to pick, but how are they going to win?
All right. So, obviously, I tip New South Wales. I always do. I don't always think they're going to win, but I do think they're going to win tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I was very confident in the last game with Latrell there. And that confidence was based on the fact that even though they got pumped on the scoreboard in game one, I actually thought they had quite a crack, and dominated the game in parts with a man down. But
I agree with you there, Griff. I thought once he enacted his plan of putting of getting the right people in the right spots, like it actually, I thought the Blues looked really good, and it was just you can't win Origin with 12 players.
Yeah. So I got confidence out of that game.
Yeah.
And then with those changes, with Latrell coming in, with Mitchell Moses coming in halfback, I was extremely confident we would win in game two. I did not expect we would dominate like we did, but this one's going to, obviously, we're starting at 0-0, and anything can happen. In an Origin game, and there's been plenty of games in the past where I was very confident of a Blues victory, only to be disappointed. And that's when you really think you're going to win, you're a lot more disappointed. When the expectation is there.
Yep.
It's only happened twice in the history of State of Origin where a decider has taken place at Suncorp on the old Lang Park, and New South Wales have come out victorious. I think, I know we've only won once, or twice, sorry, but I think it might be 9 times that we've lost. It might even be more than that, where there's been a decider up there and lost.
Yeah.
Now, part of that is because Queensland have had better teams in a lot of those circumstances, but not always. And then they're certainly a much more dangerous team on their home ground, with their fanatical supporters having influence on the referee and obviously influence on the players themselves. Obviously most teams around the world in all sports go better at home than away. That's just how it is. But certainly there's a dominance of Maroon at that ground over the years, but particularly when it's a decider. Now, they have a triple X team, and that means watch out. Don't watch too much if you're under 18. They have the X Factor Reece Walsh, X Factor Hamiso Tabuai Fido, X Factor on the bench, Caitlin Ponga.
Big inclusion.
And if you're into their sponsor, which they wear on their sleeve, 4 X's, you could probably throw Selwyn Cobbo into that category. He's got X Factor about him as well. So they pose a threat, no doubt. They have attacking weapons that, if they fire, they will win this game.
Yep.
They will blow us away. Now, I go through the blue side, and I wouldn't really say that there's an X Factor player so much in the whole squad. Not at the level of the hammer of Reece Walsh, of Kalen Ponga, with just can turn a game just out of nowhere with their speed, their ability to beat a man, and certainly a high skill level there as well. New South Wales, you go through the 17, everyone's solid. We'll talk about, some of the replacements come into the team. We'll talk about him soon, but just on Queensland, they are much faster across the park, and including off the bench, there's more speed there. I would have loved it if it was pouring down rain. I think that would have, to an extent, nullified some of the advantage that Queensland have in terms of the two squads. If I was to go through player by player, I'd probably lean towards the Blues. I haven't done it, but I just think New South Wales more solid, and this is a State of Origin traditionally has been a form of football where a solid team generally gets the job done more often than not.
I agree with you, Griff. You mentioned the speed of the Maroons of Queensland. I want to also, like, they do have speed, but the power game has to belong to the Blues.
Oh, absolutely, Shane.
And that's what I think.
It's such a contrast.
Yeah.
Such a contrast of the two teams, and it was the power game of the Blues that got the job done in Melbourne, and I think it will be again tonight. Walsh, Hammer, Kalen, they're on the front foot and their forwards are matching the Blues or dominating the Blues, they'll run riot. The Blues have to dominate in the middle and dominate field position with the kicking game of Mitch Moses, which was brilliant in game number 2. If the Blues do that, they'll win the game.
Yeah.
And we saw what they can do, even though they're not like Latrell is an X factor player, but the guys they've got there, they can all score tries, they can all tackle. You're sort of not looking, thinking, oh, gee, is that guy going to get the job done tonight? My only slight question is the defense on the wing of Zach Lomax. Obviously, I think he'll be targeted again, but he's really good in attack. He's brilliant in the air, and he scores tries both first and second game. If he can get another try tonight, that helps us. But you just some question marks on his individual defense and his positional play in defense, knowing that he's played most of his career as a center. But if he can communicate well with Crichton, who is probably the best defensive center in the game, they're going to have to be on. Like you got Walsh, Hammer, Kalen Ponga coming at you. They're just amazing. Walsh hasn't been in the best of form, though he was very good last time he played against Penrith. So obviously he's got to be controlled. They will try and, just basically bash him within the rules, no doubt. They'll try and do that again. They got Selwyn on the wing, who can be rocks or diamonds. Rumors of a rift between him and Billy Slater. I'm not look into that at all. But Selwyn, we know he's a match winner, but he can also have an off night. So I think he's going to be targeted. Dane Gagai has an amazing record, probably the equal of most, if not better than most, at State of Origin, winning Wally Lewis medals from the wing. But
I think and I'm only going to say this now so I don't forget it.
Yeah.
I think when I talk about the Blues later on, I think that's where the Blues have value.
Yeah.
I think that's where the Blues have the speed. If they can get speed on the inside outside of Dane Gagai, and there's a guy who I think will be pivotal in playing that part. But I think that's where value is to be had.
Yeah. Look, talk about X Factor, but sometimes with X Factor players, they're not always on their game.
Well, big risk equals big risk.
Is to be targeted. Yeah. I watched Mitch Moses go past him, just burnt him twice.
That's right. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Lost against the Knights.
Yep.
So obviously, Mitch Moses is a smart guy. He's going to go there again. The Hammer is very solid in defence. I know Stevie Crichton, I think it was in game 2, sort of went over the top of him, but he's got a very good record at Origin, very low missed tackle count, so he's a danger.
It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be interesting his relationship with Holmes tonight, and especially in that defensive unit. Because we know Val loves shooting out the line. So it's going to be, will Val hold his line and allow Hammer to do what he does well? Because if Val gets a bit trigger happy, that's going to just disrupt. That's going to give open slather to the Blues down that side. And the same on the other side. If Zach Lomax wants to run in quickly, I think the key tonight, I think two players that are going to have massive games. Sorry, Griff, just while you're on them. Is the Hammer and Crichton. Because they've both got wingers out. They've both got these wingers that love to jam in. And it's almost like I hope for the Blues, not so much for Queensland, but I hope they don't step back and wait for I hope they engage the tackle, because it's going to be. I think it's going to be about which one of these two are more disciplined, because they're both great defenders. Stephen Crichton and the Hammer are brilliant defenders.
Yeah.
When they get
I think there's potential try scoring.
Yeah.
From the Blues because of the. I don't think it's a great defensive outside backs that Queensland have, apart from the Hammer.
And Val Holmes loves to jam. So does Lomax. So if I'm sure there's the Queensland fans go, but it's just going to be whether it's going to be telling those outside wingers, hold your nerve. Just believe in me, hold your nerve. I'll call when I need you. Otherwise, let me engage the tackle, because these two players, when they engage a good tackle, it is dominant.
Yeah. So while I certainly fear what Queensland can throw at us when they've got the ball, I really do believe that defensively there's, they're fragile. Didn't have a good game in game 2. Mitch Moses crunched him twice. He lost the ball. I got a lot of time for Dearden as a player. And again, he's an attacking threat. He's done it at Origin level as well as for the Cowboys. DCE, he has been really a model of consistency at State of Origin level and club level over a number of years.
We talk about players you'd clone him, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so he, I think he was man of the match in game 1. I'm not certain of that, but I think he was.
I turned it off, so I wouldn't know.
He's obviously a threat. DCE, his kicking game is great. If it goes down to a shootout for a field goal, he's your number one candidate. I think he's kicked more field goals in the current NRL players than anyone else, and substantially. But I know he's been around a long time, but he wins games that way. In the forwards, the Maroons, I don't think it's a physically intimidating group of forwards at this level. And we talked about it in previous games. No Thomas Flegler, no Tino Fasu or Mala'awi. They're two massive losses. Tom Gilbert as well is not there, but it's Tino and Flegler who are missing. They've missed the whole series, and that's been to the advantage of the Blues.
And I think they've cut off their nose to spite their face. I don't care what his form is. Surely Fafita is,
Thank you, Billy, for not picking him.
Yeah, I know. That's what I honestly thought when the teams come out. I'm like, okay, who's the guy either in our starting lineup or on the bench that's going to be hanging wide to protect our 5'8" or our halfback at this guy running at him? And then when the teams come out, and this is no disrespect to their interchange bench, but I thought, wow, I thought to myself, wow. I thought, it's like you won the lottery. Like you don't know how you did it. You just did it.
I think Billy Slater's the only man in Australia who thinks that Fafita shouldn't be in this side. The guy.
If we were building a team. Sorry, Griff.
He's in great form.
And Griff, I was saying this the other day.
The Titans have won 3 in a row, and he's been an integral part of it.
Well, after the last podcast, Mika and I were having a good chat, and I said, "Okay, you're building a team, right? You're building it from scratch, and you have there is no salary cap. That's what New South Wales and Queensland is. I would have him in that side in a heartbeat. Surely."
I was extremely disappointed when
I thought
the Panthers.
I thought, where's I honestly thought that he would get. I honestly thought he'd get a run, and and I agree with you when you talk about their forward pack and you go, if you don't have the power game, you need X factor. Like
Yeah.
that's what Tino does. You know, like
He's both.
he's
Pretty much,
both. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like he is just for the Titans. He does that stuff. If you know that you're going to have to like when a player comes off, Isaiah Yo's going on. This is no slouch. This is a brilliant guy. Isaiah Yo would be in the starting lineup of any team. And I know why he's on the bench, and I think Maguire's, and we'll talk about Maguire, my theory, and his coaching shortly. It's very strategic on why he's on the bench and the role he plays. You've got to combat this guy. Mitch Barnett, Spencer Linu, Connor Watson, who's a bench specialist. These are guys you've got to combat. And you combat that with X Factor. And I know Kalen Pong was there, 17. Look, you'd want to hope, and I know we're talking about their forward pack, you'd want to hope their forwards, if I'm a Queensland fan, I'm hoping my forward pack don't get gassed. Because
they're one forward short.
I've got Grant and Ponga. And you know what? If I get an injury or if I'm the Blues, I'm kicking it on the fourth tackle. I'm punching it deep. I'm making them run. I am making them run. Because you know what? If they're gassed, they've got Fodawaker and Kafusi, and that's it. I don't know why they didn't pick the guy.
I'm glad they didn't. But, obviously Slater, he lives and dies by the decision he makes. If they win, he's a genius. But I think their chances of winning with him would have been much better. And like Kurt Capewell, he played at Penrith, and I had great respect. But I have great respect for him. What am I saying? Not have. But there is no way in the world I would be picking him ahead of David Fafita. Nane is a very, very good player. He scores a heap of tries, a lot of them from bombs. Can be a little bit rocks or diamonds. But he's very good if he's diamonds. But he's probably not had his best series. Carrigan obviously is a quality player. But looking Harry Grant, he's brilliant. One of your first players picked, even though they pick him on the bench, I think he's just fabulous. Fodawaker's solid. He's a good player, Mo Fodawaker. For Kafusi, wouldn't be surprised to see him start. He's there.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, but he's definitely the wrong side of 30. Can he do what he did in the past? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. If they get a forward go down, let's say for example, two of their big guys, either Collins or Carrigan go down, they've got massive problems. They basically have no go forward. Ponga is one of the elite players in the NRL, can do things that most players can't do. It's going to be interesting to see how Slater puts him on, because unless Walsh goes down injured, Ponga's going to have to play in the front line in defence. Now, that's been tried several times, and I know in his first Origin game he had a blinder playing a similar role, but the guy's been knocked out lots and lots of times to the point where Newcastle said, okay, we've tried the 5'8" experiment twice. It hasn't worked. He cannot play in the front line of defence. And if he is there, you watch the Blues absolutely pummel him. And they'll be just running straight at him, not deliberately trying to knock the guy out, but to do damage, to nullify again his attacking brilliance. I think it's a massive gamble to have two guys that are not forwards on your bench when you can only, have a maximum of four. And while I don't subscribe to the theory you've got to have four forwards, I think you've one sort of player who can do a bit of a roving role is as many as you can carry. It's not like one of the backs that they've got has got experience playing in the forwards if someone goes down. So, look, it may work well for them. It may be that they blow New South Wales off the park with their speed and skill. I don't think it's going to go that way. Anything you want to add about Queensland before we look at the Blues, Shayna?
Yeah, Queensland. Look, I find I get Ponga being there. I find it strange in that role. If someone had said to me, Harry Grant's pulled up lame or injured, and we've put Pong in there, I get it. Look, the key thing for me is how Reece Walsh is going to rove in this back line and what role he's going to play. I think that when we look at the halves, very solid. I think that with their forward pack, the key thing I see in their forward pack, and I agree with you, I wouldn't be surprised if Kaufusi starts, plays 20 minutes, and someone else comes on. That's what I'm thinking anyway. I think that Fodawaker and Kaufusi for me are the two players I'd have starting for no other reason than if it's going to be big, powerful, heavy hits first, those two can absorb that and let the players come on and have a bit of free range. I don't see their forward pack as being something that's particularly damaging, but what I do see is a bit of speed in and around the ruck, and how that can then play into people like Nanai, one off and allow for space. Patrick Carrigan, they're going to play deep. They're going to play back. They're going to play deep. They're going to want to pull the Blues forward and stagger that line. If they pull the Blues forward to Patrick Carrigan, as Cameron Murray's role is, if they pull the Blues forward and stagger that line, they've got outside backs that are absolutely going to prime for that. Tom Dearden will score without passing the ball. They've got some very, very good skill with the ball in hand. My biggest thing is if the Blues play the power game and they kick third, fourth tackle, turn these guys around, make them run, try and gas them, get them deep, who's going to get them out of trouble? Because when I look at the team, like when any two teams are playing, I say, okay, who's taking the first and second hit up off a kick? All right, so to me that will be Cobbo, Val, Cobbo, Gagai. They're the first two. After the teams that come around, Patrick Carrigan's going to be probably taking the third hit up, the old Bradley Clyde system that he's adopted. Fourth and fifth, I'm now thinking, okay, if the forwards are turned around, this is where you can pin them down. I think what you're going to find is they're going to throw the ball around tonight. The Maroons are going to throw the ball around a bit like they did in the second half. They're going to go wide, and the Blues are going to have to be up to the task. If their passes stick, they've got some very, very accomplished outside backs and some very accomplished second rowers on the fringes who can not only pass the ball, they can actually get meters, they can cause havoc. I think that's going to be the Queensland game. I think you're going to see from Queensland a game of touch football. A game of where they're going to pass it early. They're not going to be afraid to do it. And this is why they got people like Kalen Ponga on the bench. They don't want another forward. They're going to be running. They want to pass it wide. They want to get space through the middle. And I think this is where they're going to find some value. If the Maroons come with that kind of game, that worries me, because all of a sudden they're getting very cheap meters. And in that second half, they did this a little bit. They did it in game one. They got very cheap meters, albeit, to be fair, against Liam Martin, who was out of position. But I think they're going to try and pinch these cheap meters out wide so that their forward pack don't have to do a lot. I think what the Blues need to do is they need to steer the play in towards the middle. A bit like the old school Roosters umbrella defense, where it was like, if they're going to run wide, you're going to get hit early. So I think that's where the Maroons are going to have value. Agree with everything else you've said.
What would have been more dangerous rather than Ponga on the bench would have been Ponga on the wing.
And
another forward like a Fafita.
You know what? There's a small part of me, Griff, that says what we're seeing 1 to 17 won't take the field, and I'm not sold that Trent won't come up. There's some part of me that just goes, you've got these two reserves in Trent and Marnie, who could actually add some steel. There is a small part of me that says that this 20, when at 1 hour to go, when we see the team list, I don't know whether we're going to see 1 to 17 as it is. There's a small part of me that says it's going to be different.
Well, we shall see.
Yeah.
What are we? Less than 4 hours away now.
Yeah.
Okay, switching focus to the good guys. New South Wales Blues. Happy with Edwards. I thought he played well very well actually in game one.
Can I say, now that you've mentioned him, he's the guy. I think he's the linchpin for the Blues tonight. I think he's the guy that.
Through the middle.
I think he is the guy that will win. Mika said, I remember Mika saying it last time, where who's your man of the match? And she said Jerome Luai. And then when we were off air, she goes, look, either of the halves. If either of the halves are man of the match, the Blues win. Tonight, I think it's this guy. I think this guy is primed for one of those performances like in the grand final a couple of years ago, where he just owns it. And he has so much confidence when To'o's around him too. It's almost like these two have this symbiotic relationship where they feed off each other and they do so well. I think, for me, it's Edwards. Edwards is the key tonight. He is the guy to make the meters, to wreak the havoc, to run the ball, to really direct traffic out the back. And, we saw it last time when the Blues were playing this really direct game. And then all of a sudden, it was like they just clicked. It's like they fooled the Maroons. Out the back to Murray. Murray got the ball deep, passed it along, and all of a sudden there's space. Dylan Edwards creates that space. I think he's going to target Gagai tonight. I think he's going to target either shoulder. Dylan Edwards is the guy for me tonight.
Okay, so we both agree that he provides one of New South Wales' best weapons. And I think through the middle is where we're really going to see him excel. Brian To'o, you just expect he's going to make 200 plus meters. He's a very good finisher. He scores tries that some others can't score simply because of his power. The only flaw in his game really is the fact that he's not as tall as some other wingers. No Xavier Coates tonight. He's a big loss for the Maroons.
Yes.
He's been in wonderful form this year, Xavier Coates. They lost both their wingers. And still, maybe Kalen Ponga will appear on the wing at some stage, but we shall see. Bradman Best has been in good form since he come back from the injury. He was fabulous last year in his Origin debut. He's not Latrell Mitchell, but he's Bradman Best, and at his Bradman and Best, he's pretty much almost an X-player, X-factor. He is a very, very powerful attacking weapon, built reasonably low to the ground. I guess in some ways he's a similar sort of build to to his wing partner, Brian Toto. But he scores tries, and whoever is marking up on him, they're going to be on their game to stop him.
And you know what's interesting, Griff? Regardless of their height, their actual catch percentage when they go for catches is very high, both of them. So although it's almost like if you out-jump them, you have to catch it. Because if you leave the ball open to them or you try and become a nuisance for them, they will catch the ball. And Bradman Best for Newcastle has set up so many tries by catching the ball and running 60 metres.
On the other side of the field, you've got Stephen Crichton, who is at the peak of his powers at the moment. He will go down in Rugby League history for his feats in grand finals. Whether he never plays another one. Scored a try in 4 successive grand finals, 3 of them on winning teams. And I think all of those 4 tries, particularly the ones where Penrith won, were crucial in their team's victory. Rightly so. Nathan Cleary was a hero in last year's grand final. But I will never forget Stephen Crichton running over the top of Katoni Staggs to keep the Panthers in the game. I think it was the second last try. And we know he's a phenomenon now in defence. He's a threat with his intercept. There were times in the last few years when he was playing with Penrith when I think he overplayed that when tries were scored against him because he went for the intercept and didn't come up with it. He's a little bit more selective now. And he's a dominant force at 23 or 24 years of age. So
his work for the Dogs this year has been sublime.
Well,
it's been sublime.
The change in his game is really he's become
sublime.
a leader.
You know, it's funny. Like I know you're mentioning Penrith and what he's done. Penrith, brilliant. In leaving Penrith, you now see this guy doing this because he's got responsibility, and you just think to yourself, wow, he, you know, you love it when players do their apprenticeship, and if they have to move on, they move on, and they add such massive value. And
didn't have to, Shane.
He's outstanding.
Don't say that.
No, but he's outstanding. Like, you know, like he is for what he's done.
Oh, they got him for unders. They got him for massive
what he's
unders.
done. It's just and his leadership qualities
should be on $1 million.
His leadership qualities, like he's one of those. Like we often talk about this show. You know, does he start in any team? And yes, he starts in any rugby league team. That's and for what he's done for the Dogs, and you know, I know it's I just can't speak when it's a no-brainer what he's done for New South Wales so far this year, what he's done for the Dogs, and what he's done previously in his career. He is just absolutely flying at the moment.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier, that battle between the Hammer and Steve Crichton, 2 just of the very best players in rugby league. And maybe the victor in that battle could be decisive in terms of the winning of the whole game. Both of them, just amazing players. Lomax on the wing, the reluctant winger, didn't want to play wing for the Dragons, signed a deal for less money at a team that is potentially a wooden spooner. How does he feel about that? I'm not quite sure, but I don't think he's thinking about it. His only focus at the moment is on New South Wales. He's been very good. I'm not sure he's the most dominant aerial player in the game.
Oh, I think he's good. He's the best.
3.
He's the best for me. For me, he's the best. He's the best for me.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of evidence for that, Shane. I think Warbrick, Coates, and maybe not so much these days, Tupu, but
Yeah.
I think they're all pretty handy. The two Melbourne guys and Lomax. He's a very good ball runner. He's powerful. He's just got to make sure that he's in the right spot come defense. But he's been very good for his state, and he's been very good this year for the Red and White. Luai is having one of his best years. I'm really pleased for him. If you asked me at the start of the year who's going to be the New South Wales 5'8", I would have said Mitch Moses, outside Nathan Cleary at 7. Jerome, he had that injury to his shoulder, which obviously hampered him in the grand final. But this year, he's been very, very good for the Panthers, and taken on, again, more of a leadership role, being the dominant player without Nathan Cleary there. And Tigers supporters who haven't had really for years much to get excited about. No, they get very excited when they have a win because they have to, because they don't have many wins. But they will be expecting that Jerome Luai will come in next year and do great things, as he's done for Penrith this year, and he's been very good for the Blues.
He looks the happiest he's been in a long time.
Well, yeah, he does. The guy's won 3 competitions.
Yeah.
But always the question mark, well, he's playing outside Nathan Cleary. Cleary makes him look good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess that's probably the main reason, along with $1.2 or $1.3 million, why he's going to the Wooden Spoon Club next year. That's next year. Again, his focus is on tonight. He's been very good, and hopefully he can reproduce what he's done particularly in Game 2. Mitch Moses was the man of the match in Game 2. He was absolutely brilliant, both in attack and defense. Magnificent kicking game. Really want to see him just reproduce what he did in Game 2 or go close to that. If he does, very strong chance, again, we see a Blues victory. So Moses, for mine, and I've had a rap on him for a couple of years. I didn't always. I thought, he was hot and cold. When he was hot, he was very hot, but he could go right off the boil. I think he's while he's, with the Parramatta side, we still don't see too many 80-minute performances. I think he's been very solid when he's represented the Blues, but he went to another level in the last game.
I think.
And,
I think
Shane,
I was just going to say, I think for our halves, yeah, we can talk a lot about what we need. Their kicking game has to be on point, and both of them. I think where it's funny. I think in the first half last game, the Blues actually paid the Queensland team paid a lot of disrespect to Mitchell Moses. They rushed Luai. They tried to get on Luai quickly, believing that Mitchell Moses couldn't deliver what they needed. He was kicking sublimely, and I think tonight they're going to be a bit more calculated. So if Jerome Luai can kick well and take the pressure off Moses, it puts the opposition in two minds, which then allows Mitchell Moses to kick well, and if they hang back, allows Jerome Luai to run. And I think the kicking game's the linchpin of what these two things are going to do tonight. What are they going to do depends on the response of Queensland. If Queensland wants to rush them consistently, well, then the forwards are going to have to make sure they get the space for them. If they rush Moses, but Luai's kicking game goes well, well, then they're going to have to rush him as well. And you can't be in two places at once. And I think the best thing for Luai in being able to run the ball, which is what he's done brilliantly throughout his career, is to get that kicking game right. And I actually think if I was, and I I think Maguire's actually going to tell them to share it round early. Get Queensland guessing. Don't be predictable. Get them guessing on who's going to kick, and then all of a sudden Mitchell Moses will take over time with his kicking game, and that allows Luai to do what he does best. I think they're a great combination.
Yeah. Yes, I'm starting to get a bit pomp shaped.
Yeah,
looking at the forwards, Captain Jake Turbo. He's there. He's an inspirational sort of a guy. We don't expect to see him play huge minutes, but he's there for the early exchanges. He will keep it tight in the middle as far as the defense goes. I don't think we see too much out of him in attack. He might take a couple of hit-ups, but I think he plays less game time again than Isaiah Yeo when they do make the change. Robson's been really good. He's a sort of a rock-solid sort of a guy. Reece Robson, not the natural flair of say a Harry Grant or an Apasai Coruscant, but he's done some good things with the ball, particularly in game 2, and his defense has been very, very good. So he's probably at some stage we'll see Connor Watson come on and try and be a bit dynamic out of dummy half, but Robson will steady the ship for New South Wales, keep it tight in the middle, along with Jake Turbo, along with Isaiah Yeo, who comes on probably for Turbo. The big man, number 10, I think he's pivotal to a New South Wales victory. He had his best game in Origin 2, Big Payne Haas. He's the best front rower in the game. He plays phenomenal minutes, making phenomenal meters, and if he can do that for New South Wales tonight, and I fully expect he will, then again that paves the way for Moses and Luai to do their thing on the back of a forward pack moving forward and putting a lot of pressure on the Queensland defence. So Payne Haas, again, another guy that just want to see him replicate what he did in game 2 or go close to that, because if he does it, there's a very high chance the Blues will be victorious. Liam Martin and Angus Crichton have been phenomenal for New South Wales on either side of the field. They run hard, they tackle hard, they don't take a backward step. No. And Queensland have not really had an answer for these guys up to this point in time.
Angus Crichton had a controlled aggression. Like, why Angus Crichton, I think, is actually at the peak of his career is, and I've seen him from junior level come through, is he has this immense talent, but he has to get sort of, it's like every football player. You have to have this controlled aggression when you go into things. When that aggression elevated, it didn't go well for him. He'd make mistakes. He'd push the pass when it wasn't needed. He'd miss the tackle. He'd get the tackle off kilter and knock a guy's head off. This is the season where he's got his aggression and his skill in perfect harmony. That second game in Origin, that's the best game I've seen him play. The same with Payne Haas. They're the best, and maybe Mitchell Moses. They played.
I think definitely all three.
I think that's the best games they've played ever.
Possibly their best games ever.
Ever, and it was just like wow. And I think it was not necessarily because they all turned up on the day. Of course they did. The players around them, and a guy we haven't mentioned yet, and I'll mention him later when I talk, is Maguire. I think Maguire's given them a brief which suits them perfectly. And Crichton for me is someone who I think early ball to Crichton gets them guessing. And he's and the same Liam Martin, early ball to Martin, that that deep play to that deep play to Murray, they hadn't done that all game. The first time they did it, Martin goes over, and it's almost like we're setting you up. We're just setting you up. And that's what Liam Martin can do, and that's what Angus Crichton can do. These are two guys, they're at the height of their powers at the moment.
Yeah, they're tough men.
And defensively sound. Defensively.
Liam Martin, he misses tackles, and has done through his career.
Yeah.
But the ones he makes,
they hurt.
He hurts, and in Penrith, not too many Liam Martin missed tackles result in tries. And I hear sometimes commentators going on about, Martin's missed a number of tackles. It's because he's trying to make the opposition hurt, not want to run the ball.
And second guess, rush out of the line. It's not as if, that's why I thought it was strange when he got shifted to centre, because his defensive game doesn't really suit centre. But yeah, I agree with you, Griff. He comes out of the line for no other reason. It's like, well, you're going to have to make a decision, because if you make the wrong one, I'm going to hurt you.
Yeah.
And that's what rugby league's about. Bash him up.
He's not a huge guy, but he's an intimidating guy. Angus Crichton is a big human. Yeah, and he's also intimidating. And they're a great combination. And then in the 13, just an absolutely brilliant rugby league player, Cameron Murray, who missed game one due to injury, missed a few games. Question, I guess, from some, do they play Cameron Murray? He played part of the game for the Rabbitohs. He come up trumps. No, we didn't have any doubt he would, but he's a phenomenal player. He gets those quick play the balls through the middle. He's a big threat to Queensland. That back row of New South Wales is, I think, possibly the biggest strength of the Blues lineup. They're all mobile. They're in their own way. Not in their own way, but they're fantastic defenders. And I said, Liam Martin, he misses a few tackles, but there's a reason for that. I like Connor Watson's selection in game two. He didn't have huge minutes, but he did a good job. If those Queensland forwards are a little bit tired, and they will be, he's got the speed in a similar way to what Harry Grant does, to create some problems through the middle.
This is why the Ponga for that utility. I was just going to say, this is why the Ponga selection does my head in for Queensland, because they've got a guy like Connor Watson opposite them. You got tired forwards, you can't replace like for like. Well, then someone's got to stay out there and be in the middle. And I'm loving it. I hope it works tonight.
Yeah. I mean, it's that double-edged sword that, okay, let's say a back goes down, he can cover quite admirably. But I think he's predominantly there to come on, give Robson a bit of a rest. Isaiah Yeo, one of the premier players in the NRL, he will play most of his football unless there's an injury. He'll play a prop in the middle, and he's got all the skills. He's sort of kept him pretty much to a running game through the middle rather than a passing game. It's working, but he's got that skill to not just punch a hole in the line, and we've seen him do it in game two. And but he can off. Obviously, he's got the good hands. Can get the offload, or he can play that role where he's basically controlling the game. So he offers plenty. Mitch Barnett, I think, is a good selection at the moment because he has been playing for quite a while now as a prop, but he's played most of his career in the back row, so he can cover either position. He's been probably the Warriors' best player this year. He was brilliant for them in their last game, even though it was a loss to the Bulldogs. It wasn't his fault. He was outstanding. He's another tough guy. So New South Wales, they won't lack for grunt out in the middle of the field, and I think he'll add something when he comes on. And a man who adds more than anyone, I think, in the game off the bench is number 17, Spencer Leniu, who, well, he's just dynamic. I do believe he's the best bench forward, and I think it's a specialty position for Spencer. Obviously, everyone wants to start, but he's got this power that is almost unstoppable, particularly when he's up against forwards who've been out there for 25 minutes or so working really hard. He comes on fresh. He's very, very hard to stop. He's possibly the most aggressive player in the game. It's generally controlled aggression. We know there was the incident with the mouth, but he doesn't tend to get sin bin too much for aggressive play. He's able to channel it within the rules of the game. And he has been a thorn in Queensland's side. Again, another player who I'm so upset doesn't still wear the black or the pink of the Penrith Panthers, but I think he is, again, crucial to what New South Wales can do in attack, and they really couldn't control him in game 2.
I think Spencer Leniu is brilliant. I remember Dean Witters back in the day at Parramatta, and Fitzgerald was actually asked why doesn't he start, and his answer was, well, when you jump on the football field in this game, this day and age, you play your best 60. Who cares when that best 60 is? And if that best 60 is coming 20 minutes off the bench for your team, well, then that's so be it. And that's what he does. Look, I don't have a lot more to add, Griffo, to what you've said to the players. I'm going to add something here about Michael Maguire. Michael Maguire is the king of breaking droughts. He did it at Wigan. He broke the drought at Wigan. He did it at Wigan. He did it at South. He did it for New Zealand. Hopefully, I think he'll do it for the Blues. I thought last game was one of the most brilliantly coached games in State of Origin I've seen. I think Michael Maguire is the forgotten piece in this puzzle. The way he coached, and even in game 1, he had a plan. The problem was Swatali getting sent off sort of stuffed that up a little bit. I think when he got the plan back on track, and Hudson Young in the centres and everything else, I thought the Blues looked very good. I just think you can't win Origin with 12 players. When I look at Michael Maguire, I think that he's a guy who's got a great team, and when he's given control. And look, the keyboard warriors of the past week have talked about, how can a guy from the Tigers win us this? Like, you got to put your head in. Like, I remember when Graham and I started this podcast, we were impartial for no other reason. We listened to 2 other podcasts, and they all went for teams, and they weren't football fans. They were fans of the dog. Well, a really good podcast. 2 Doggies fans had this podcast. It was 20 minutes on the NRL and an hour on the Dogs. And it's like, that's not what we want to be. And this is what does my head in. When people don't follow rugby league, they follow their team. If you follow rugby league and you understand what Maguire has done in his career, you'll soon realise this guy's a highly successful coach. And he's a highly successful coach at getting teams together He picks teams in order to beat his opposition. when he picked the New Zealand side, New Zealand Rugby League told him he was on crack. They said, "What are you doing?" He said, "This is the side to beat Australia." And it did. It worked. His 3 best coach games of his career. Number 3, back end of Wigan's first title in 9 years. That stretch and the way he coached and pulled apart teams was phenomenal. I think his second game was the New Zealand win over Australia, where they absolutely towed them. For me, his best one was where he picked apart the Roosters in the preliminary final. I think one of those spots is going to get replaced by tonight. Because the last game for the Blues is number 4, and it's a close 4. I think it's going to get replaced by tonight. I think he's picked this side to absolutely do a job. And whether they win, and last time they won by a lot. You only have to win by 1. That was, I'll never forget. I'll never forget when he talked. And anyone that wants to bring up the Tigers, watch Tales from Tiger Town, and you'll soon realise the board didn't let him do half the things he was allowed to do. Moses Mbye was an absolute cancer in that team. And they were a dysfunctional joke that he was trying to get together. Anyone wants to tell me that he's ill-equipped for this game, you are kidding yourselves. He is more than equipped for this game. He's got the smarts and he's got the skills. I think this is ripe. And I think if the Blues win tonight, like the Blues last win, it's going to come down to a level of coaching that pulls apart Queensland. And that's where I'm the power game and everything I'm confident in. I'm also confident in what he's going to produce. So for me, no disrespect to Billy Slater, but very interestingly, every game we see that happens before they go to Queensland, we see Queensland being chippy. We see Queensland in the news. We see Queensland doing this. Mate, they have gone silent because Maguire's done his job. He put them in his cage before Game 2. Game 2 really set them back in the Avery. Now we've got this happening. I'm looking very much forward to this, and quite pumped. It's well, what is it? It's almost 5 o'clock as we post this, and I'm very much looking forward to this game tonight. But after the game tonight, we also have a series of NRL games that we need to look at and preview. And on Friday, 19th of July, the Raiders take on the Warriors. All these games will be somewhat affected by Origin, who's in, who's out. I suppose big ins for the Raiders, Hudson Young, Jamal Fogarty, they're 2 big ins. Again, Nickel Clockstad's out for the Warriors. Looking at this game, I think the Warriors have been a bit off the boil. I think when you look at their team, Tuivasa-Sheck's on the wing. I think they're struggling at the moment. They're struggling for some sort of adhesion. Again, they're going to be affected by Origin. The Raiders are at home. I think the addition of Jamal Fogarty and Hudson Young is a good one for them. In saying that, also, Zach Hosking is on the interchange bench. That's probably another good in for them. I see them just being a little bit more stronger in the forwards and a bit more consistent. So therefore, I've got the Raiders winning this one, Griff. In the flip of the coin, pick the home side.
Yeah. Yes, I will go the other way though.
Yep. And you know what? Like I said, flip the coin.
You're missing quite a few players. When I look through this team, it wouldn't be your first choice 17, but from memory, they won their last game. Maybe it was the Dogs game. Oh yeah, that was Yes, that was a game that I tipped them, and they should have won if a penalty was given.
Yeah.
And even Annesley came out and said they should have made the penalty. It was a Matt Burton field goal
Yes.
in extra time, but it shouldn't have come to that because
on a podcast on another day, I'll talk about Golden Point because it's grinding my gears.
Oh, I like Golden Point, but anyway, it was what it was. They played quite well that day, but they just went down. I'm going to tip him here. The Raiders. They actually started the year quite well, and I think probably for most of the year they've been in the top 8. I'm not quite sure when their last win was, but they've sort of been going a little bit down the ladder. They've had, I think they had a bye last week. They've gone off the boil. They do get Fogarty back, which is a big in for them, and it's not bad looking side on paper. K.O. Weeks obviously he's got some X factor about him, as has Xavier Savage. Timico also. So it's actually a good team. But we'll stick with the Warriors. I'm probably going to regret it. Canberra haven't won for a while. They're due for a win, but I'm going to stay with the Warriors.
I want to know. Sorry, Griff.
State of origin. If Mitchie Barnett, for example, gets injured, I'll flip the tip.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm sort of saying that this is going to be a massive game. I don't think he'll play. The other thing for me is, RTS probably has been a little bit down on form and confidence, and that's why he's wearing number 5 on his back and not number 1. I think they're this will be another Warriors Golden Point you watch.
I'd love to see a full list of guys out for the Warriors.
It's massive. It's massive. Oh, it's massive. And you know what? Very hard. Like Montoya and Nickel Klokstad out this week. It just seems like the list just grows. I'm amazed they can actually field a full side. The full 20 odd. Because it just seems like they've just every week.
Johnson's been out, but Johnson wasn't in good form.
No. Yeah.
But the centre, Rocco Berry, he's been out for a while. But anyway, I'm still going to back him unless I hear that Barnett's out. Then I'll change my tip. Next game, Shano.
At 3:00. At Stadium in Gosford, in Trustee, I think it's called, Group Stadium in Gosford. We see the South Sydney Rabbitohs taking on the West Tigers. I suppose key in for the Rabbitohs, as apart from last game, is Cameron Murray. He's going to be in there. Jai Arrow's out. He'll be out for the rest of the year. He's succumbed to that injury. He's done. Alex Twal in for the Tigers. Alex Seafarth out. So it sees quite a, I suppose, for the Tigers, it's somewhat stable side that they seem to be able to have the same thing now for a couple of weeks, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Waits to be seen, given that Seafarth is out. For the Rabbitohs, they lost last week. They are kicking themselves, and I've heard behind closed doors, it's just been, where was the defence a few weeks ago? They win last week. They are on the steps of the 8. They are so far away from that now. It's going to be their forwards are going to have to back up. They're playing a forward pack that on paper, I know games aren't played on paper, actually look quite solid. I think that, at times it does.
Paper, they look great.
The Tigers, that's right. The Tigers, jeez. they just play down to what they need to do. Mind you, they, in history shows that they tend to show up against South Sydney, so who knows. Look, Jai Gray playing at fullback with what's happened with Latrell Mitchell. Can I give my crystal ball? I will tell you now, Jai Gray will finish the year at fullback, and Latrell Mitchell will probably come into the centres. Jack Whiten's been playing some great football, so has Lachlan Galvin. He's been a shining light in what's been something that's horrible for them. I think that... Look, I'm picking South Sydney. I'm picking South Sydney. If someone said, all right, Shane, why? I just think that the Tigers' defence cannot hold a guy like Cody Walker and Jack Whiten back. Close to the line, they will find ways to score. Alex Johnson will dive over in the corner. Jacob Gagai's actually been scoring some good tries. The guy who I think, interestingly enough, the guy who I think has played some phenomenal football since his positional change, phenomenal enough to move Cameron Murray to the second row, is Keon Kolomatangi. I think their forward pack has looked a lot more settled now that he's in at lock. He's in the middle. Cameron Murray will be moved to the second row. Tallis Duncan off the bench. Mamazelos helping cook. Mamazelos is going to get far more game time now, looking long term. I think South Sydney's year is done. I don't think they'll finish in the 8, which means that Mamazelos really will get that experience he needs. Can I also look to say that I'm not too sure that Havili will actually be in number 17. I think you'll see a positional change there. I think they'll go in with Mamazelos and 3 key forwards. For the Tigers, look, really, Appy's number 22. He's got to come into that side. He's got to be there somewhere. I'd say Taylor De Silva. Although he's one of the guys that's in, I think that they'll switch that. If they don't switch that, well then, I don't know why Appy's the guy with the noose around his neck. I thought his 10 in the bin last week was pretty soft. I didn't think it should be 10 in the bin. But then again, they're their own worst enemies, the Tigers. Look, I've got South Sydney winning this one, but every time I said I've got South Sydney winning against the Tigers, I tend to be on the other end of the ledger, and our good friend the doctor tells me about it. But I actually think the Tigers, they're back in the doldrums, and I don't see a way out. Griff?
Yeah, I'm going to tip Souths here. Not confidently, but I still don't like that Souths backline.
Yeah.
And I know it's that way because of injury, but Milne and Kenner in the centres just don't do it for me at all. But yeah, they don't really have alternatives, I guess. Saying that, White and Walker are pretty handy in the 6 and 7. I like South's forward pack. They're back in form, and I think they'll still think there's still a chance for the 8. Tigers know there's no chance for the 8. I think that could be a factor in the winning of the game. Souths will be a bit more desperate. Reality, I don't think Souths can make the 8. They've got a horror draw after this game. They played most of the top 4 teams, if not all of them, and I think it's just beyond them to be able to win those games, particularly without Latrell. But I do think they beat the Tigers.
Just one thing for the Tigers fans. Interestingly, Dion Tuapa is named at 18th man. There has been some injury concern on whether Cody or Jack are fit. There's been this sort of toing and froing of whether they're carrying niggly injuries. Interestingly, they've chucked a 5'8" as the replacement. So maybe if you're the Tigers, you may be thinking that maybe one of those is out, but I've still got South Sydney winning. hopefully. On 5:30, at 5:30 on Saturday, we see the Newcastle Knights taking on the Brisbane Broncos. If you told me at the start of the season, in round 20, that one of these teams were 10th and the other was 13th, I would have said, well, the Knights are 13th and the Broncos are 10th. Not that way. It's at McDonald Jones Stadium too. Knights and Broncos. I suppose this game will be origin affected, depending on what happens. I suppose Bradman Best, Dane Gagai, Kalen Ponga, they're in, depending if they play. The big in from last game for the Broncos is the fact that Adam Reynolds is named at number 24. Whether he plays or not, I suppose that's another question. Of course, Carrigan, Haas, and Walsh, and Cobbo, they're going to be in from the origin. If the Broncos play Adam Reynolds and all their origin stars play, they're getting close to what would look like their strongest 17. In saying that, I'm hearing that Adam Reynolds is still a week away. That really it's going to be whether he travels there or not. So it's going to be one of those things, a couple of days out. If he doesn't drop off, you think he's going to play. The majority of the reserves bench is the origin players. I think the Broncos are in a position now where they have no option but to play origin players. They can't rest the origin players. They've got to play them. They're playing Newcastle Knights, who have been, well, they've been up and down like a yo-yo all year. Kalen Ponga, back for them. You would think that their origin players have to play. It's going to be a very, very interesting game, this, and whoever plays will really dictate what happens. Tyson Gamble's number 18th. I think we look to see him find his way into that starting lineup coming back into the side. I think he's going to find his way in there. I've got the Broncos winning. If what I think will happen, and that's every origin player plus Reynolds plays, although word is he's a week out, if we take it on face value and all those players play, the Broncos win. If they go minus Adam Reynolds, that's a slight hit. If they go 2 or 3, especially Reece Walsh in there, origin players, I think it's game Knights. I've got the Broncos on what's been listed and who will probably play. If what's been listed, the best of the Broncos and the best of the Knights, I've got the Broncos. This is a tough game at the moment, Griff. This is almost an hour from kickoff to wait and see. What are you thinking?
Yeah, the Broncos, I love watching them lose.
That's not a bad thing, is it? And great. You know what? Depending on who they field, that could happen this week.
Yeah, look, of course they could lose. If they're anywhere near their best team, they win, though. I'll probably tip them. Newcastle, you just don't know what sort of Newcastle's going to show up. They got absolutely pumped last week. They were dreadful. They had 2 centres. The 2 centres were second rows, and it was an abject failure. So I don't know what other options the coach could have used. They got 3 origin players coming in, Ponga at the back and Gagai and Best in the centre. So they're obviously a much stronger side with those origin players in there. But as I said, if the Broncos are anywhere near their best side, they will beat Newcastle. They're a couple of classes above the Knights. That last week, I thought that was almost red pen stuff for the Broncos, but I've not got a red pen through them yet. If they lose this game, then the red pen goes through for the year. They nearly took that game last week. They were down by a long, long way against the Dragons, and I tipped the Dragons last week. And the reason was, so they played the power game. That they beat the Broncos with all their Origin players out. The Dragons dominated for most of the game, and then I don't know what happened, but the power plug was pulled out, and the Broncos came right back into it. And I think it was only on goals that the Dragons were able to take out the 4-point win. The number 7 is problematic for the Broncos. Reynolds been out most of the year, and then the backup, Madden, was injured. Josh Rogers, I'm not sure he's up to standard for an NRL number 7 from what I've seen. They've got a lot of hookers in that 17. What I'd be doing when I play Billy Walters in the halves, he came through as a half.
I agree. Yeah,
and put you can start with either Smoothie or Blake Moser. Blake Moser obviously is the sort of the heir apparent as far as quality hookers coming through in Queensland / Broncos, and he made a difference last week when he come on. I just think that would be a better option for the Broncos to win the game. But what do I know? They've got a coach who I think there's still question marks about his ability to be a good coach. I don't think he is, personally.
I think he's a people manager. I think he's a brilliant people manager.
Well,
but he's
a good guy. He's
a
very
great guy. I've always said it. He's a poor.
I don't think he's a good coach.
No,
he won series with the Maroons, but seriously, they could have had no coach.
I could have coached them.
Well, they could have had no coach, Shane. You've got a bit of ability.
The old Shane Warne scenario. We don't need a coach.
Yeah. Well, they didn't. They had Cameron Smith.
Yeah, that's it. And you know what? Adam Reynolds has been their coach. Adam Reynolds has been their coach.
The players even said that at the Broncos.
But when you're injured and you can't get on the field and you can't run around and you got to care about your own health and you've got to care about your own rehab. Well, you can't go out there and tell everyone what to do. Look,
if Kevin Walters fails to get this team into the top 8,
he's gone. He's gone. And
seriously,
can I say the only silver lining for the Broncos is, out of every team outside the 8, they're the only team with a positive for and against. They're +9. And that's
the Reynolds coach.
Only. Yeah, well, you know what? When he left South, that was my key problem. Is that he did so much work in that regard. And I agree. I think that you know, like you can tell his job's on the line. Look at the way he acted last week. He was ropeable. He was absolutely livid. And the thing is, the problem is with the Broncos, who are staring down they're 4 wins, they're 4 losses in a row. They're 6 in a row. They're 0 and zip since their last bye. They are in trouble. I don't care what anyone says. And they are a team that, okay, let's just say the Knights win. They then skip ahead. There's certain teams like Raiders or Warriors. One of them are going to go one more. So they've got a problem where the players, even if they win, the teams around them are going to go ahead as well. So they're going to get no benefit from what they do. I think I
will defend them on one thing, and that is that they had half a side out.
Yes.
Tuesday of Origin.
Yes, true.
And I just think this has to stop.
Yeah.
And I don't like the Broncos. I was happy to see them lose. I tipped the opposition. But in all fairness, and I've said this about Penrith and I've said it about 1 or 2 other teams, they are being, and it's really could cost the Broncos a spot in the 8. Penrith is going to be there. They've got enough wins. But while it's great to have these elite players, they're taking up a fair slice of your salary cap, and they're told, no, you can't play because you're playing for someone else. And it's cost the Broncos 2 points last week. I've no doubt they would have beat St. George, both teams, full strength. No doubt at all. I can't recall from earlier Origin-affected games how they went. I think there was a game where they rested players after Origin and lost.
Yes. Yeah, their Origin period for them has been horrendous.
Yeah. So it's probably going to cost them a spot in the semi-finals, and it's not fair.
No,
it's not fair. It's got to stop this. There's got to be a separation between Origin and NRL, and I'll leave it at that because I don't want to bore.
No, we've banged on about it for
going over ground that I've already gone over.
Yeah, no, we've banged about it.
It's just more evidence.
It is true.
But anyway, I'm tipping Broncos here. I do believe most of the guys, if they're not injured, will play, and I just think they'll be a bit too classy.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's desperation. Desperation.
They have to play. On Saturday, 7:35 at Amy Park in Melbourne, it sees the Melbourne Storm take on the Sydney Roosters, first versus third. In what's an interesting game regarding Origin affection. See what happens here. Of course, we can talk about all the news. I suppose the key outs, the players we know aren't going to play. Jared Weir-Hargreaves for the Roosters, not going to play. Bronson Garlick for the Storm, not going to play. So if you look at their team 1 to 17, we've got two very, very strong sides here that are they're just littered with absolute talent. It's interesting. I look at these sides. There's a part of me that says the Roosters are starting to just find this mojo, this Trent Robinson round 20. Let's start building to the finals. Wishart, Jerome Hughes, 6 and 7. You've got Pappenhausen up against Tedesco. This is a really tough game to pick because you've got two teams who are at the height of their powers this year at the moment. I think some of the key matchups, Katoa against Radley, you've got Grant and Smith, you've got Kamika and King up against May and Collins. Then you've got who we talked about as being Spencer Leniu, the best bench player. Sandon Smith's been doing so well as well. Fa'alongo for the Storm. Now, any bench that has Welsh and Big Nelson, like it's just both sides are absolutely blessed. Sean Bloor in at number 11, playing some great football. Great to see a guy who we've been banging on about in this podcast for years as a really, really good player. Good to see him do. Kamika doing some great things. Walker, Hughes, Kiri, Wishart, Dom Young, Grant. You know, there's just it's just across the board. Swatali'i back for the Roosters. He is the guy who I think, after what he did in Game 1 of Origin and what's happened, I don't think there's a guy in rugby league who needs to... He is such a proud guy. He'll want to prove himself and prove to everyone else. I've got the Roosters winning on the back of he's back. That's it. This is going to be a cracking rugby league match. Tonight I just can't wait for. Well, I'm salivating over this one too, Griff. I've got the Roosters in a tight game, and I can see Swatali'i playing a very, very big part in that. Tupanua in the centres as well. But I just think that I think the Roosters in this one just. What do you reckon, Griff?
Yeah, I'm tipping Sydney. This is a big clash. These teams have played in grand finals. They don't like each other. the Storm were very unhappy when the Roosters stole Cooper Cronk, and then since obviously Brandon Smith linking up with the Roosters out of the Storm system.
I don't know if the Storm was as unhappy as that one.
Perhaps. Yeah. But I think they would rather have had him, but, obviously with salary caps. And you just on the salary cap, it's pretty handy if a guy is a New Zealander doesn't play state of origin, because you're guaranteed he's going to play more games. And look at Jerome Hughes. He's the form player of the competition. I think he'll win the Dally M this year because he's just consistent every week. And I don't publish the points anymore, but he's been absolutely outstanding for this Storm side. And at times, he might have been the only one of their big four, like the big four being the Flying Dutchman, Munster, Harry Grant, and Hughes. And there's been times, I think, where he's been the only one of those guys out there and being able to lead his team to victory. He's an amazing player. And again, because he don't play state of origin, he's a big asset, as any New Zealander of quality is. The Storm have been really consistent this year. I think they've only dropped about 3 games, which in a year where the teams are so close, it's a credit to their coach because, as I mentioned, they're really, I don't know if they've had their best side on the park, maybe for 1 or 2 games. Munster's been out for extended periods, as has Ryan Papenhausen. Harry Grant's missed a few games, but he's played most. And even Jerome Hughes has missed the odd game here and there. On the flip side, the Roosters, when they win big, and they've got substantially the best for and against in the ladder. They're missing a few players, most notably, as you mentioned, JWH. But I think even a bigger loss for them is Joey Manu. I'm not quite sure when he's back. I think he missed the last game. But there's plenty of firepower outside Sammy Walker and Luke Keary still for them to feed the ball to, with the likes of Joseph Akuso, Suali'i back. Dom Young is a try-scoring phenomenon. Tupanua, who's a back row playing in the centres, but he's done a good job and he's played a bit there. Tupou, we know, is a great finisher, and Teddy is still a very, very highly credentialed rugby league player, even though not selected for Origin. Their forwards are strong, but again, 1 or 2 absences there, but it's still very strong. They're aggressive, they're quite big, but they're also pretty mobile. Even the big guys are pretty mobile, like Crichton, Lindsay Collins, Spencer's very mobile, and Nafahu White. Still can't find a spot for Siwa Wong in the 17. These 2 teams, they could be the teams battling out in the grand final. I really think the competition is it's a 3-horse race between Storm, Panthers, and Roosters. I might be wrong, but I can't see the Premiers coming outside of those 3 clubs who've really been almost a decade now where there may be one team other than Panthers, Storm, or Roosters in the last decade who's won the comp. But I can't think of it off the top of my head, Shano. I don't know if you can help me out there.
Yes, 2014.
Oh, okay. So, all right, the Rabbitohs. All right, that's fair
and
enough.
the Sharks.
Oh, of course, 2016. Yeah. Well, I stand corrected.
That's all right.
But, all right, so we can say from 2016, and that's a long time frame, really, with only 3 teams, and I think they're all multiple winners during that time frame. it's quite amazing, really, that these guys, they are, I think, the three top clubs.
At the moment they're
Yeah,
definitely
and
there.
have been for a while.
Yeah, they're the clubs that have they've got their house in order.
Yeah,
They got their stuff together, and
yeah.
I agree.
But it's Roosters this week for me.
Yep.
Just before we go to the last game, or I mean, about two more games,
Okay.
I did forget earlier to talk about the grab.
Oh yes, what's your grab?
It was a similar sort of scenario.
Sorry, Griff, that's my fault.
No, that's all right, mate. I forgot myself. Similar scenario in terms of a bomb was put up. This one not so much a midfield. It was closer to the line that it came down, and the very, very talented winger, who was a fullback, Leha Hopawate. I don't know if you saw it or not, Shane.
Mm-hmm.
But he took the ball and threw. I think it was a no-look pass inside. I think it was to Garrick. I might be wrong on that, but it was just a piece of absolute brilliance from Leha Hopawate, who set up that try with incredible skill. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, there's my grab for the week.
Becoming a very good player. Look, we spoke about one of these sides just then. On Sunday, 21st of July at Bluebet Stadium, we see the Penrith Panthers in number 2 taking on the Dolphins. I call them Redcliffe, that are in 6th place. Some key
I'm happy to agree with you there, Shane.
Key ins here for the Panthers. Nothing more than their captain, number 7, Nathan Cleary. We've got Dylan Edwards, Isaiah Yeo, Jack Cole. They're out. They are out of the side. In an extended bench, we see Liam Martin, Brian or Jerome Luai. I might as well say Tyrone Peachy.
I saw that.
We've got.
Please.
Yeah, that's true. Looking at these sides, I think that Coach Cleary is really looking at who will need to play out of their skin for the Blues to win. Hence why we're not seeing Edwards or Yeo in there. Key out for the Dolphins is Ewan Aiken. The Anthony Milford, Felice Kafusi, the Hammer, they're expected to play. Now, the Mills on the extended bench with Tessie New. He's another one. However, if you look at they've got Nikarima Katoa, Jack Bostock is back, who's been playing some great football, Herbie Farnworth as well. The Hammer named at fullback. Quite frankly, I don't know who the Dolphins have or who they can choose. I think this is a fairly cut and dry case. The Penrith just have even 1 to 17 as they stand. I think the Panthers have too much quality and strike power across the park. I've got the Panthers winning this one. I think, Griffo, you'd be the same. I've actually got the Panthers winning this pretty well. I thought the Dolphins' defence last week against South Sydney, who were clutching at straws at times. South's got although Dolphins got to win, South did get a fair chunk of points. I think Panthers will, at home, really put them to the sword. I'm not going to critique the Panthers, Griff. That's your job, but I've got the Panthers winning by a bucket load.
Yeah, I wish it turns out that way. Like, I'm a little wary, to be honest. I saw some ridiculous price on the Dolphins for this game, and the $4 something head to head. I don't understand it, because Penrith haven't. Well, they were, when they've lost the game, they've come out against the Sharks and played their best performance, 42-0. The Sharks were comp leaders then. Then they played the Broncos, which was their last game, and the Broncos were actually very, very good that night, but Penrith were able to grind them into the ground eventually and had a small win. But I don't care about the size of the win. In games where they haven't had their best players, they've struggled. I watched them against the Cowboys in the rain without the Origin players, only Isaiah Yeo coming out of the Origin game backed up, and they really did struggle. They've got a few wins this week. It's an interesting lineup. I do hope to see Luai, Toto, and Martin take the field, because if they don't, I really think they could be going down to Redcliffe Dolphins if they line up as they currently are. I'm surprised to see Dane Laurie named at number one, not because of quality, because he's a very, very good player, and he was by far their best against the Cowboys when he played fullback. But he played on the wing. He come in for Taruva, and only lasted maybe a very short time. He did his hamstring, and there we see him listed. Now, I don't normally expect to see a guy just miss one week and come back from any sort of hamstring injury. So I think interestingly with Isaiah Wongi, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that name. My apologies. I think it's Wongi, but he is a fullback and yet to make his debut. I have a sneaking suspicion that Isaiah Wongi, who has been a shining light for probably 3 years in reserve grade, I think we might see him take the field in place of Dane Laurie. I don't have no mail on that. It's just Laurie had a hamstring injury. Wongi's a fullback.
Yep.
Taruva comes back. Now, I'm really concerned about this guy's defense outside of Isaac Tango. Tango has been hammered on the website, and I nearly swore there. I nearly dropped an F-bomb. There's some of these morons, and I've not been happy with Tango's form, but some of the crap that people come up with, unbelievable. Tango is a quality player who's been probably, to be fair, he has been out of form. But if you're a supporter of a team, just to criticize the guys who are representing your club, you're a fan. You're not a supporter.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. Like
fair weather fan.
There's people that they follow a club but would have no idea about rugby league. And Isaac Tago's a great player. Like
he is,
mate,
but he has been out of form.
Of course, but you know what? I remember a time when Luai was out of form. I remember when Cleary was out of form. You ebb and flow. A team like Penrith, if you're a fan of Penrith and you're having a go at a player because they're out of form at the moment, geez, bigger picture stuff. And that's the thing. It's bigger picture stuff. And I think, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Griff.
I like the look of Casey McLean. He's back in the centres. He did play against the Cowboys. He's a fast, tall, athletic young player who I think is the future of Penrith in the centres, in one of the centre spots. Disappointing his brother's not there. I looked through the sides and I'm assuming he's injured because he wasn't listed. His brother Jesse, who's played a couple of games, he's also a speedster. Alamoti's been good for Penrith this year, and I think he's a guy who, if they make the grand final, I think he'll be playing in his first grand final if they're good enough to get there. It's going to be tough, but they can do it. Jack Cole also, as you mentioned, out. Jack Cole has, again, he was copping a fair bit of criticism from his first few games earlier in the year. But I think the criticism's dropped off, and people are saying this guy's got a bit of quality about him. And I'll admit I wasn't quite sure about Jack Cole, but so he's obviously got an injury. Schneider has been solid this year, and he's a good player. He's a good backup guy. I really hope that Jerome Luai's fit and ready to go though, because Nathan Cleary's coming back. He's been out for a long time. He's not going to be anywhere near his best. And I think having Luai there takes, a fair bit of pressure off him in his first game back. But, if Luai, if he's not there, Schneider is quite capable. He just doesn't obviously possess the attacking threat that Jerome does. The forwards, apart from Isaiah Yeo, they're pretty much at full strength with the potential for Liam Mark to come into the squad. I certainly hope he does. Garner, good to see Garner back. He's missed a few games. He's been very good for Penrith this year. Another guy who seems to cop a lot of criticism from so-called supporters is in the 13, Matthew Eisenhuth. He's a solid player. He's a good backup player. He's obviously not Isaiah Yeo, but he doesn't deserve some of the stuff that I've seen. On the bench, Lindsay Smith, Liam Henry, I've got huge raps on those two guys. And Luren Patia, he made his debut against the Cowboys also. He did some good things. He come up with a couple of errors in the game. He'll be better for that first experience. He's another one of these guys who's sort of a small, big guy. He's a prop, but he's not a huge human, but he's quite mobile. I guess he's in some ways, I see a bit of a similarity to Moses Leota. If he can be, 3/4 of the players that Moses is, then he's got a good future. He played New South Wales under-19s last year. To'olau is basically a halfback who deputizes as a hooker. Not a bad player, but I really hope, for Penrith's sake, that those Origin guys are able to back up, because if they don't, then there's a very strong chance that they will not take the 2 points, because the Dolphins, while I've not been a huge rap on them, I do see they've got a lot of attacking ability with the likes of the Hammer, Jake Avarillo, Herbie Farnworth, Isako Bostock. That's a very good 1-5.
And they've found ways to win, haven't they?
Tries. Yeah, well, they've got pace, they've got skill, and the Hammer is an elite attacking unit that exists in the NRL. He may be close. I'd say he's in maybe the top 3 attacking weapons in the NRL from a perspective of a back. Herbie Farnworth's in the top 10. I really think he's a magnificent player, and he's a guy that the Broncos have really missed. We talked about the Broncos this year. One of the reasons that they're not up as high is because they're missing Herbie, Tom Flegler. They also lost Capewell and Paliasia. So, but Herbie Farnworth I rate highly. Tavita Pangai Jr. was outstanding in the game against the Rabbitohs, I thought. Now, he's a handful at his best. Hope he doesn't bring that this week. And with Tavita, you just never know. He's playing for a contract somewhere. So I think he'll be trying, obviously, to impress whoever, whatever club is interested in him. He does have potential to break the line. We saw it last week, and get an offload away. He's also got the potential to make a lot of mistakes and give away penalties. So I'm hoping we see the latter. I'm going to tip Penrith, but as they line up, I'm not confident. If those 3 Origin guys come in, particularly Luai, then my confidence level will increase. And certainly Brian Tottle to come in on the wing, he's a huge part of what they do in attack. Him and Edwards are massive losses if they're not there, because their whole game is based around the three at the back taking up those first three carries and going probably 40, 50 meters downfield. So a lot is lost if Tottle's not there from an attacking point of view. But Penrith, sorry, I'm a long-winded with this summer. But there we are.
All good. So Penrith, we've both got consistency there. On Sunday, you do not know how much I love to say this. At 6:15, an evening Sunday match to round off the weekend and get a little bit of the sour taste of Monday out of our mouths. We have the Cowboys taking on the Bulldogs, 8th place, 5th at Queensland Country Bank Stadium in Townsville. I suppose some key ins, Braden Burns.
We might miss one, Shane.
What, did I? Did I miss
4
one?
5.
I thought that. Oh, what have I done? Hang on. What have I done?
You've missed one.
Jeez, my computer. Actually, now my computer's chucked a wobbly. Sorry.
Okay, so we've got Seagulls v Titans.
Oh, Seagulls v Titans. What am I doing?
Pines Park.
All right. Seagulls versus Titans. Sorry, the Seagulls v Titans. Let the truth be known, I don't give a shit about this game. No, that's not fair. I do. It's,
you don't like
I don't know where I did.
I
pressed the wrong button. Seagulls v Titans. Key ins, Ben Trebojevic, Corey Waddell, Daly Cherry Evans, Jake Trebojevic, and Ben Condon is out for the Seagulls. We have, I suppose, Fodawaker, he's in for the Titans. These are two clubs who are absolutely itching to get a win at the moment. When you look at the Seagulls, they've got the odd point. They're making the odd point work for them at the moment. Tom Trbojevic is named at fullback. We know that they said they were managing his injury, and where he plays, he plays. The Titans are one of these sides that really, when they come and when they want to play, they can match it with any team in the competition. However, away from home, playing the Seagulls, who seem to have found their click at the moment, might be a bit difficult for them. I'm banking on Cherry Evans playing this week. I'm also banking on Jake to play in the lock. I've got the Seagulls winning this one. I just think that they've got too much strength. I think the strength for the Seagulls lies in their back line, being able to work on what the Seagulls do. For me, the Titans, if they want to win, it's on the back of David Fafita and Sam Verrills. If Fafita and Sam Verrills can get the forward pack on the front, if they can get the forward pack up and running and get the backs on the front foot, Brian Kelly, he's one player who can get a bit of benefit from that. Kieran Foran, Jaden Campbell at 5'8". I just think there's too much class in the Seagulls, Griff. I've got the Seagulls in this one.
Yeah, I'm Tip Manley. They were very good last week, obviously, and they're strengthened this week with the return probably of the Origin players, but also I think maybe Ben Trebojevic might have missed the last game. I'm tipping them. I really have been impressed with what the Titans have done over the last 3 weeks or so, where they've got 3 wins in a row. An interesting aspect of this game is the return of Des Hasler to Brookvale. Much publicised dispute with the club, suing them for what I think is a ridiculous amount of money, to be honest. But that's just my opinion. They offered what I thought was quite a reasonable payout, given, it would have been money for no services rendered. But
money for jam, as my grandma would say.
Yeah, well, but anyway, that's an interesting sidelight. The game itself, I think this could be one of the games of the round because both teams like to play a good brand of attacking rugby league. Both teams, their defence questionable from time to time. Plenty of pace in both teams, and I think we'll see a lot of tries. Brimson, he's listed on the reserves. Okay, the 18th man.
18th man is AJ Brimson.
Yeah,
which I find interesting.
Yeah, well, if it's obviously a matter of whether he's fit to come back from
100%.
the injury. You find a spot. I think possibly the future for AJ Brimson in this very talented team when they've got all the players available might be the number 13. Because Keanu Kinney, he's a gun.
Yeah.
Like the young guy.
Yeah.
I think Jaden Campbell's best position is 6. I also think that's Brimson's. Or Brimson maybe is best at a 1. But if you can have all those key guys on the field at the same time, with the pace that they've got out wide, that's a dangerous team.
I was asked this question a while ago about AJ Brimson if he couldn't play in the back line. The only other thing I would say is if Sam Verrills plays 13 and he plays 9, that was the only other thing.
I think Verrills, he's been in and out of the number 9 jersey. I think he's the guy at 9, and out in the future, maybe not this year, but maybe the long-term future, maybe Brimson. If you're going to play all those other guys, Kinney, Campbell, the experiment
13.
with AJ in the centres didn't work. Hasler come out and said you're never playing there again. So you want all those players in your team. And then when they bring Big Tino back next year, they're actually, potentially, but it's always the word potentially, a very, very strong rugby league team. But I think this year, even though they believe they can still, mathematically, they're on the same points as the Broncos, the Rabbitohs, and then they believe they can make the 8, and they can if they win every game, or 6 of the 7. But I think that's a little bit beyond them, and I don't think they win this game. So I think their season basically comes to an end at around about 6 p.m. Sunday night. But we do have after 6 p.m. Sunday night, Shane. I think
one more game. This is the game I was talking about, which is good to see. 6 o'clock Sunday games. This is why we need a Perth team in the competition. The Cowboys in 8th place take on the Bulldogs, who are in 5th at Queensland Country Bank Stadium in Townsville. Key ins for the Cowboys: Burns, Clifford, Shibasaki. They're in. Talangi is out. Salmon and King out for the Dogs. I suppose big question marks over whether Crichton plays. Burton will play for sure. Look, it's an interesting game, this one, because there's a small part of me that wants to pick the Dogs, that wants to say the Dogs will win this. And then I look at the North Queensland side, and I look at the North Queensland side in relation to who's playing and what's going on, and I just go, geez, at home, that's a very strong lineup. There are a couple of guys for the Bulldogs. Big shout out. Josh Curran has absolutely been playing out of his skin. Reid Marnie, Matt Burton's kicking game, Stephen Crichton. I just think that this is going to be such a close game. This is a flip a coin for me. I'm going to do my flip a coin mentality and pick the Cowboys. I'm picking the Cowboys with absolutely no confidence. Scott Drinkwater, he's been fading in and out. I think he's more in at the moment. They're looking to Braden Burns, Clifford and Townsend, 6 and 7. Their forward pack is something that I think they can hang their hat on. I think if I looked at the two teams, whilst Josh Curran, Reid Marnie in good form, Villarmy kick out, I just think when you look at McLean, Granville, JT, Healy and Balloon, it's just they're just so strong at the moment. Look, I've got the Cowboys in what I think and hope is a nail-biter. Um, if the Cowboys don't show up at home against the Dogs this week, this could be a very interesting outcome for both these sides. This could mean the Cowboys dipping outside the 8 and the Bulldogs well and truly cementing themselves in it. Both these sides have so much to play for. I think this is going to be a very tough, tight match. Great to watch on a Sunday afternoon. Griff, what are you reckoning?
Yeah, it's crucial really for the Cowboys.
Yeah, they're out the 8 if they lose.
They've been real yo-yo stuff this year, up and down. They're in the 8. They've got better than a 50% record. They've still got one bye up their sleeve. The Bulldogs and 24 have used all their buys. It's one of those, those sort of 4-point turnaround games. Like, if the Bulldogs can beat the Cowboys, they go 4 points above them on the ladder, and you expect they're probably going to finish higher than them come the end of the year. I wouldn't, even if the Bulldogs win this, I'm not declaring them definitely in the 8, but they're pretty close to that if they can win. Conversely, the Cowboys, they can really solidify their spot on the ladder, knowing that they've still got a bye up their sleeve. If the Dolphins go down to the Panthers, then the Cowboys, well, they've got not great for and against, actually, looking at it. They probably still stay below the Dolphins on the ladder, but they'll join them on 24 points. Now, that's making a few assumptions. Bottom line, I'm tipping the Cowboys at home, expecting that they will be bolstered by some of those Origin players, maybe not all of them. But I did. The Cowboys at their best, the top 4 team. At their worst, they're a bottom 4 team. You just don't know. And then coach there, Peyton, must. Well, I think he's pulled his hair out already, but he hasn't quite unlocked this team as much as he would have liked, really, with the depth of talent that they've got. I think they'll make the 8, but these sorts of games are crucial.
Oh, it is, and the pivotal thing for the Cowboys winning this is if you lock out the teams around you. Now the Dragons have a bye. The Dragons' next 2 games are, from memory, the Panthers, and then they play a top 8 team as well. I want to say the Storm. So if the Cowboys lose this and then the Dragons leapfrog them, whilst the Cowboys play the Tigers, and you'd think that that's okay, then they're on level pegging. They've then got to chase. They've then got to chase, and the next game after that's the Broncos. For the Dragons, it's the Dogs. You want to get yourself leapfrogging these sides that are on the bye, so you don't have to chase them. If you're ahead of them, well, then you just need to keep winning, and what they do, they do. When you're chasing them, it's such a harder thing to do. Well, that rounds out round 20 of our. Who can you believe we're at round 20 already? Yeah. That rounds out round 20. Tonight we've got Origin. Griffo, thanks again for joining us. Absolutely great to catch up with you and talk football. Go the Blues. I really have a good feeling about this. I genuinely think they can win. Hope your team wins. We're in round 20. Next week after Origin, we're talking about run home to finals, Griffo, and that's who would have thought that?
It comes quickly, doesn't it?
Sure does. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great week. Hope your team wins and goes the Blues tonight.
Thanks, listeners. And, Blues to win. If the Blues win, I get the round for last week on the tips.
Oh.
So, Yeah, I tipped the 5 NRL games last week, which is a rarity.
Fantastic.
No, there was only 5 games, but
Mate,
yeah,
still good.
it is. I'll take it.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.